Hey, good morning, Motion Church. Are you glad you're in God's house today? Hey, we want to give a shout out to our downtown campus. Can we give some love from South Hill to downtown? Love you all. I just love Bill and Karen Wilmot. They've been serving this church for like maybe 15 years now. And Bill and Karen, give everybody a wave from downtown. Also, downtown is Faith and Alex Fox. Now, if you've never met Alex Fox yet, he has the most manly, intimidating beard of anybody on the planet. You'll be his beard is like down to here. I mean, birds make their nest in that dude's beard. I mean, it is like, but it's groomed and looks good. So, Alex, good job, buddy. We also want to give a large shout out to all of our online campuses, literally, people watching literally all over the world. We have people in about 27 different states and a couple different countries, and we have people just dialing in on the web. So can you give some love to our online family? The Grahams, who moved to Arizona, that foreign country of Arizona, the Grahams have been down there for how long, you guys? Like maybe 12 or 15 years. And they just love us. And we're their church. And we're home. So God bless you from your living room and your jammies and cocoa. So good. God bless you. The title of my message this morning is Set the Edge with Obedience of Faith. Everyone say the word obedience. You see, if there is a desire in your heart that has gone unfulfilled, if there's something that you want and you're longing for, there is a magical key in every relationship to get what you want. How many of you know that that's true? See, it's been said that the man is the head of the home. But we all know that the woman is the neck. And the neck can turn the head any way she wants it. If there are things that you desire in your life, obedience to this book and this word is the magical key. That is the secret sauce. That is how it works. When you obey the Lord and your heart is obedient to him, God will on your behalf do things for you that you could never do for yourself or by yourself. Because God will act supernaturally on your behalf if you will but obey him. Now, I know that that's a challenge for us because what are we? Human. And what do humans like to do? Disobey. Because we were all once children in our parents' homes. And nobody was 100%. I don't care how good you think you were. No one was 100%. And God wants to get us to this place of obedience because God is longing. I mean, God is literally in this blocks, on the line, gun up in the air, waiting to explode down the line for you to get you where your heart would be desirous to, the things you need and the things you want and the things you have hungered and dreamt for. He wants to make those things come to pass. But I'm telling you right now, the key is obedience in faith to him. That's why we're going to be reading about a man by the name of Abraham this morning from the book of Genesis. Now, have you noticed in the world in which you live that there are some crazy people out there? Are there? If there's some crazy people in your world, give me a wave. Can you see their faces right now in your mind? Yeah, I live with one. My wife would say, I'm married to one. I have the most amazing wife on the planet. No disrespect to all you other people that are wives and those who have them. But my wife there's a medallion for women like her in heaven that are stuck with guys like me. She's going to get an award from God. Seriously, an award. And I just know that there are some crazy people out there. I'm one of them. Don't be so... I don't know if you heard that downtown, but we used to have an MI student that now is going to be leaving the program. People do crazy things. Has anybody ever heard of Lawn Chair Larry? Give me a wave if you've heard of Lawn Chair Larry. Yeah? Matt, you've heard of Lawn Chair Larry? Yeah. Here we go. Larry's boyhood dream was to fly. When he graduated from high school, he joined the Air Force in hopes of becoming a pilot. Unfortunately, poor eyesight disqualified him. When he was finally discharged, he had to satisfy himself with watching jets fly over his backyard from his lawn chair. One day, Larry had a bright idea. He decided to fly. He went to the local Army-Navy surplus store and purchased 45 weather balloons and several tanks of helium. Now, the weather balloons, when fully inflated, would measure more than 4 feet across. Back home, Larry securely strapped the balloons to his sturdy lawn chair. He anchored the chair to the bumper of his Jeep and inflated the balloons with the helium. He climbed on for a little test, while it was still only a few feet above the ground. Satisfied it would work, Larry went back in the house, packed a large picnic basket with several sandwiches and a case of Bud Light. He loaded his pellet gun, figuring he could pop a few balloons when it was time to descend, and went back to the floating lawn chair. He tied himself in, along with all of his supplies, and then it got interesting. Larry's plan was to lazily float up to a height about 30 feet above his backyard after severing the anchor, and then in a few hours come back down. But things didn't quite work out that way for Larry. When he cut the cord anchored to his Jeep, he didn't float lazily up to 30 feet. Instead, he streaked into the LA sky as though he were shot out of a cannon. And he didn't level off at 30 feet, nor did he level off at 100 feet. After climbing and climbing, he finally leveled off at 11,000 feet. At that height, he could not risk shooting any of the balloons, lest he unbalance the load and really find himself in serious trouble. So he stayed there, drifting cold and frightened for 14 hours. Then he really got into trouble. He found himself drifting into the primary approach corridor of Los Angeles International Airport. A United pilot first spotted Larry. He radioed the tower and described passing a guy in a lawn chair with a gun. Radar confirmed the existence of an object floating at 11,000 feet above LAX. And then instantly, the airport procedure swung into full alert, and a helicopter was dispatched to investigate. Now, LAX is right on the ocean. Night was falling, and the offshore breeze began to flow as it does down there. It carried Larry out to sea with the helicopter in hot pursuit. Several miles out, the helicopter caught up to Larry, and once the crew determined that Larry was not dangerous, they attempted to close in for a rescue, but the draft of the blades would push Larry away whenever they neared. Finally, the helicopter ascended to a position several hundred feet above Larry and lowered a heavy rescue line. Larry snagged the line and was hauled back to shore. The difficult maneuver was handled flawlessly by the helicopter crew. Now, as soon as Larry was hauled back to earth, he was promptly arrested by waiting members of LAPD for violating LAX airspace. As he was being led away in handcuffs, a reporter dispatched to cover the daring rescue asked why Larry had done such a crazy thing. Larry stopped, turned, and replied nonchalantly, "Hey man, I'm from Southern California. This isn't remotely crazy. And besides, a guy just can't sit around." There are some crazy people in our world. Here's my admonition to us. Why don't we take all that crazy and harness it for God? Why don't we take all that craziness that's in our world that wants to sin, do damage, do hurt, be disloyal, be immoral, be crazy outside of the boundaries of God's absolute obedience laws, take that crazy gene and focus it for God. Do you know that there are two kinds of light in the universe? Two. There is something called diffused light and focused light. Now, many of you have flashlights in your drawers, don't you? How many of you know that your batteries are all dead because you haven't changed them in 3 years? But nevertheless, if they were working, you would turn on that flashlight and the light would be diffused, giving you a pathway to see in the darkness. But did you know if you take that same light and you focus it, and you focus it, and you focus it, and you focus it so tightly that eventually it will become a laser beam with the ability to cut steel. So many of us are living in a world of diffused light. Oh, we have light to be sure, but that light is spreading all over the place, not really doing any damage against the forces of hell or doing construction for the kingdom of God. Now, here's what I want you to do strategically. Downtown, get ready. Alex, get ready. I know you're an athlete, pickleball player. Get ready. I want you to give somebody a high five sitting next to you. Ready, go. The slap was super weak up here at South Hill. So we're going to try this yet again. Give someone a high five. Ready, go. Much better. Now, here's what I want you to say out loud with me. Ready? I'm going to say it, then you're going to say it. Give me 5. One more time. Give me 5. Easter is 49 days away. Didn't know if you knew that or not. I do. We church people, and that's our business. We're supposed to know those dates. I want you to write down on a piece of paper. I know some of you don't have that material. You're going to have to go buy it. I want you to write down 5 people's names that you're going to begin to pray for, that you're going to invite to Easter. You want to talk about getting a little crazy? Why don't you try putting people in a position where they can win? Why don't you take your neighbors and your loved ones and your coworkers and your classmates and invite them to Easter? Better yet, don't invite them, bring them. You want to get super crazy? Have them sit with you. Give me 5. You see, God wants you to begin to work in obedience, because if you work in obedience, there's favor that finds your life, and sometimes favor isn't fair. Have you ever looked at someone's life and go like, man, what's up with their life? Why is it so favored? Favor isn't fair. God doesn't treat everyone equal or same. He treats everyone fair. It is fair in proportion to obedience. God is looking for people. It says in 2 Chronicles 16:9, the eyes of the Lord roam to and fro across the face of the earth, seeking to bless and strengthen those who are fully committed to him. That's Bible, people. Now, we're going to read about a man by the name of Abraham, who was one of those guys. Now, Abraham was living in a time where there was no written word. There was no Bible, no manual, no roadmap he could refer to. Matter of fact, he was living in this area called Haran in Mesopotamia, and there was polytheism. People were worshiping the sun god. They were worshiping the moon god. They were worshiping the grass god. They were worshiping the dirt god. They were worshiping the smog god. They were worshiping all these other... There was no smog, but you get what I'm saying. They were polytheistic. Poly meaning many, theistic meaning gods. They're worshiping many gods. This one guy, Abraham, looks into the night sky and says, that's not true. There's not many gods. There's just one, and you're him. Good job, Abraham. Then the angel of the Lord, it says in Genesis 22:15, called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says, because you have obeyed me and not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name, I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars of the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies. Now, on both of our campuses and those online, let's read verse 18 out loud together. Ready? Here we go. And through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. Do you know what that is? That's the rippling ramification of choice. Do you realize that sociologists have stated that introvert people will influence 10,000 people in the course of a lifetime? Introvert people, not type A's, type B's, and less, will influence 10,000 people in the course of a lifetime by their decisions that they make. You see, there's a rippling ramification, like a rock dropped in a pool of water. The water ripples out, and there are ramifications of disobedience, and there are ramifications of obedience. I don't know about you, but I want my world to be blessed because of me. But here's what I know. Because of one man, everyone say one man. Because of one man's obedience, a man by the name of Abraham, you and I are blessed today. Hey, did you enjoy that car you rolled in today? Abraham. Do you like the clothes that you have in your closet? Abraham. How about the shoes on your feet? Abraham. Do you enjoy the usage of your limbs? Abraham. How about your hearing and sight and sense of smell? Abraham. Do you enjoy that place where you live? Abraham. Do you love the fact that there's food in your house? Abraham. Do you like these relationships you've gathered? Abraham. Every single blessing you enjoy right now is because of one man's choice to obey God. One man. Now, I did this case study this past year of Abraham's life because I said, God, here's what I said. I want my life to be like Abraham because I know how far away I am from that, and I want to be better. Do you know that there are 12 tests that Abraham had to face before the Lord where God tested his obedience? God tested. Now, some of them were just pop quizzes. They were only worth about, 8% of his grade. But then there were some big finals and midterms that he had to take. And because Abram didn't blink or wince or fail, because he passed these tests of obedience, you and I are blessed today. And I said, God, here's the deal. I have children and I have grandchildren. One day I'll have great-grandchildren. I have a church I'm privileged to lead. There are friends in my life. I am a son. I have parents. God, I have siblings. I want people in my purview to be the benefactors of my obedience to God. Help me, Jesus. And so God direct me to do this case study of this man, Abraham. You ready to learn some stuff? You ready to learn how to be obedient to God? Here we go. Here's the first thing you got to have. You've got to have destination affirmation. You've got to have destination affirmation. You've got to have destination affirmation. Abraham was living. Hey, Abraham wasn't just living, he was balling out, yo. Abraham was large and in charge in this area called Haran. He was living, he was like the mayor of the town. He was like the guy that everyone loved. He was known. He had 3 generations of father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and he was like the heir apparent of the cool kids school section of the cafeteria. Everybody loved him. Listen to what God says to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. The Lord said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to a land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless all those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families of the earth. Everyone say, all the families of the earth. And say, that's mine. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Look at verse 4. I want us to read it out loud on all of our campuses. Ready? Here we go. So Abraham departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Now, I want you to look back. At this verse 1. Call U-Haul or pods. Get all your stuff together and go to a land that I will show you. Notice he doesn't tell him where. Notice he doesn't say, this is going to be the route. This is how long it's going to take. This is the obstacles you're going to face. These are the heartbreaks you're going to have along the way. These are the challenges against mighty kings you're going to have to endure, including the Pharaoh of Egypt. He didn't have to know. There are so many times when it comes to our faith, if we don't get the end result, if we don't know where Z is, we're not going to put one foot in front of the other. Not doing it. Little Christmas reference song. I don't know why I jumped into my head, just did. You see, Abram didn't have to know. God says, go to a land that I will show you. And you know what? He loaded up the truck and he moved it wherever. When our children were small, we would drive the 6-hour drive from hell to North Idaho. Have you ever been on a road trip with a 2 and a 3 and a 4-year-old? 6 hours or more in a car, give me a wave. Bless you, bless you, bless you, bless you, downtown, bless you. Because, you get in that car and their little bodies aren't made to sit still. Right, James Dean? Your Papa Rock loves you. My grandson sitting in the front row, 2 years old. He's got the wiggles, man. But man, he's got that TikTok video thing working down. He's got that working. When my kids were 2, 3, and 4, we would get in the car and we'd play all those dumb games, right? I spy with my little eye. And then you're like, oh God, I don't want to spy one more thing with my little eye. And then you would play the alphabet game, right? Oh, there's A on the reader board. There's A, there's B on that sign. Oh, there's C. When you get to X, we'd be driving through like Eastern Washington. Oh, the xylophone conservatory. What? We passed it. We're moving on. We've been doing this for like 2.5 hours, and invariably, the question came. Daddy! Yes? Are we there yet? And I know we're 4 hours out. Oh God. No, but I know where it's at, and we're about this far away. They have no context of time. 3 minutes later, are we there yet? Daddy, how much longer? And then my frustration level rose, and then my response, we'll get there when we get there. And that's when we knew where we were going. You see, in this thing called faith to God, you're not ever going to know until you get there. And you've just got to be okay with being uncomfortable. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You see, here's the situation about Abraham. Here was the test. Now, you're going to have to get your cell phones out because you're not going to be able to take all these words down. I tried to condense it as small as I could, but I couldn't make it any smaller and make it make sense. So get your cell phones out and just take pictures of the screens. Here was the test. Abraham left Ur and Haran. Where do you live? Ur. You might want a name change in your city of commerce. Where do you live? Ur. Ur. I'm from the city of Ur. Yeah, I didn't move in there. Abraham left Ur and Haran for an unknown destination at God's direction. Now, here's the application. Do I trust God with my future? Is his will part of my decision making? Do I trust God with my future? That's the test. Go on to the application. Do I trust God? Do I trust God with my future? And is his will part of my decision making? Because you see, if you have to control all the variables of your future, you're going to be frustrated and frustrated large. Abraham got real comfortable with absolute trust in God. Number 2, we have to have stewardship resolution. We've got to have stewardship resolution. You just got to resolve. You got to just settle it. You got to come to grips with it. You need a resolution of stewardship. Let's just read this. Abraham went into battle, 1 king against 5. 1 king against 5. Now, Melchizedek was a righteous king, but there was another unrighteous king that didn't really want to back Abraham because it was 1 to 5. Those are bad odds in any Vegas hotel. Those are bad odds, 1 to 5. You don't want to have 1 to 5 odds. If you're getting a fist fight in an alley, you don't want 1 to 5. You want at least 5 to 5 and maybe 7 to 5 on your favor. Abraham goes into this battle, and this wicked king says, I don't know, I'm not sure if you can do it. I'm not backing you. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, does. Check this out. After Abraham returned from his victory over Kedorlaomer and his allies, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Sheval, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem and a priest of the Most High God, brought Abraham some bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abraham with a blessing. Blessed be Abraham of the Most High God, creators of the heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you. Let's read the next and last line out loud together across our campuses. Ready? Here we go. Then Abraham, is that up there? Then let's all read it together. Ready? Here we go. Then Abraham gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods he had recovered. So here's what Abraham understood. All of the stuff that he had amassed, here's what he believed. None of it was his. It was all God's. And he was simply stewarding what God had given him with 10% that went straight to Melchizedek, the high priest of the city. That's where the tithe began. Say this out loud with me. Nothing I have belongs to me. It all belongs to God, and I am simply watching his stuff. See, if you can just get real comfortable with that, when you get it, that nothing you have, that woman that you're married to, that ain't your wife. That's God's. Those kids, not your kids, God's. Those shoes ain't yours, God's. That car ain't yours, God's. These clothes ain't yours, God's. This church, not mine, God's. That house, not mine, God's. If we understand that nothing we have belongs to us, it all belongs to God, and we're just watching his stuff, that 10% thing is nothing to you. It's nothing. It's nothing. Because you get it that God is Jehovah Jireh, the great provider, not you. But if you think you are your provider, good luck with that. Seriously, good luck. Because last I checked, I'm not good at being God, and neither are people. I am not Jehovah Jireh. That's not my notes. Would you make a note, Jake? I'm going to use yours at 10 o'clock at Bonney Lake. You see, here's the test. Here's the test. Abraham gave a tithe of the loot to the godly king of Salem, Melchizedek, and refused the gift of Sodom. Here's the application. Am I watchful in my dealings with people that I give proper honor? Everyone say proper honor. Do I give proper honor to God and refuse to receive honor that belongs to him? You see, if you start walking in that narrative of your life, if you get the test and application of Abraham, listen, this is what Abraham was tested on. This was the midterm. This was worth 45% of his grade. He aced the test. And because of that, you and I are blessed because of the rippling ramifications. Is this good? Are you getting this in your soul? Okay, because if you love that, we all get the picture? Good. Here's number 3. Logical subordination. Logical subordination. If you're going to be a person that walks in obedience and faith, you absolutely, absolutely must have logical subordination. Now, God wanted to make a distinction between his people, Abraham and all of his descendants, and everyone else. God wanted to make a distinction that was not only obvious to God and the person, but to everyone else that was in their proximity. Okay, Genesis chapter 17. Then God said to Abraham, your responsibility is to obey the terms of the covenant. You and your descendants have this continual, everyone say continual. Do you know what we are? We are all descendants of Abraham. We've been grafted into the Jewish tree if you are a follower of Jesus. We have this continual responsibility. This is the covenant that you and your descendants must keep. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Each male among you must be circumcised. This is before anesthesia. This is before modern medicine and sharp instruments. In verse 11, he says, you must cut off the flesh of your foreskin as a sign of a covenant between you and me. And on that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and every male in his household, including those born there and those brought in. Then he circumcised them, cutting off their foreskins, just as God has commanded him. Now, can you imagine the conversation with Abraham and his men? Fellas, we're going to have I have some great news and some interesting news. What's the great news? We're all going to be blessed by God beyond measure. Hoorah, hoorah, hoorah. What's the interesting news? Well, we're going to have some surgery. Huh? Yeah, we're going to have surgery, and we're having it like right now. What is it? He tells them, and they said, hey, why don't you take an eyelash? Maybe cut some flesh from my tricep. I don't even need it. Because here's the deal. If I'm one of Abraham's men, here's what I'm thinking. What does that got to do with anything? What's the point in that? You see, when God is giving you a directive, sometimes you have to do the ridiculous to see the miraculous. Because God doesn't care about circumcision of our flesh. He cares about circumcision of our heart. And if you can't connect the dots, it's probably God. And there is this step of faith and obedience that you need to take in order to turn the valve of blessing and favor onto your life. Hey, listen, if there's a blockage of favor coming your way, you probably need to look no further than the obedience quotient of your own heart. Are there some things that don't make sense to you that because you can't logically deduce them with your cerebrum and cerebellum and your medulla oblongata, because the neurons are firing and you can't connect the dots 1 through 29, you go, I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense. It must not be God. Contraire, mon frère, to all those who are watching in France. See, we have to understand this, that sometimes God's going to ask us to do the ridiculous. It's kind of like when Jesus shows up on the Sea of Galilee, and it's after his resurrection, and they've been on the open Sea of Galilee, which is a pretty big fresh body of water, and they've been there all night fishing, and they're skunked. This dude calls out from the shoreline, "How's the fishing going, fellas?" No fisherman wants to hear that if they've caught nothing. Shut up, you. We don't have any. Not caught anything. They don't recognize it's Jesus. Jesus says, well, pull up those wet nets out of the water. Get yourself soaked to the bone by pulling up all those nets and cast it on the other side and you'll get plenty. Now, I'm no scientist. But if you're in a boat, what are you surrounded by? Water. Last I checked, the fish can swim in water. You know what the disciples did? They pulled up the nets, threw it on the other side of the boat, and the net began to tear because of the big haul. Come on now. Come on. There has to be this logical subordination, that you take logic and you make it become subordinate to your faith. Your faith is bigger than fact. And when you do, obedience flows, and that conduit opens, and favor begins to find its way. Number 4, and finally, this is the 4th test. This is the big one. This is the final. You have to have proper prioritization. Proper prioritization. Did I do the test? I didn't. Sorry, go back. Go back from proper prioritization. I want you to see the test and the application. Put them up together. Go ahead and put them up together on the screens, if you wouldn't mind. The test is, at God's command, Abraham circumcised every male in his family. And here's the application. In what occasions in my life have I acted simply in obedience to God, not because I understood the significance of what I was doing? Do you want to know what's straight cray-cray? Packing up your 2, 3, and 4-year-old, selling your perfectly good dream home in Seattle, and moving to an unknown city called Puyallup that you've never been to, and starting a church in your living room. Makes no sense. Called faith. Dots didn't connect. I didn't see $35 million of buildings. I didn't see 5,000 people gathering. I didn't see 41,000 people coming to Jesus in 22 years. Hello. I didn't see all that. But what I did see was God saying, if you'll just simply trust me, I'm going to blow your mind. Now, proper prioritization. Proper prioritization. Has anyone ever told you, get your priorities straight? Have you ever found yourself like giving a lot of attention to the small things and kind of neglecting the big things? Man, I love golf. I love it so much, I'm going to do it for 28 hours a week. I know that I have 7 children and I have a wife who loves me and needs to see me, but I want to be really good at golf. It's a witness to Jesus. I'm just talking about myself. In Genesis 22, I don't have 7 children. Chewy, be quiet. Was it him? Oh, okay. Spencer, you shut up. You can talk, Chewy. You cannot. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love so much, go to the mountain, the land of Moriah, and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on the mountains which I will show you. Can you imagine waking up and having God whisper that in your heart? Abraham is 100 years old. He's had no children. At the age of 100, he finally has a son, and he loves him with his whole heart. Look at verse 3. Without hesitation, without argument, without debate, the next morning Abraham got up early, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. He chopped the wood for the fire and the burnt offering and set out for the place that God had told him about. When he gets to Mount Moriah, he builds an altar and he ties his son up. There's no recorded struggle. There's no chloroform knocking him out, tricking him. There's no conking him on the head with a rock and tricking him. Isaac sacrificially lays his life down at his Father's command, trusting God. But here's a God who hates and abhors human sacrifice. Because here's what Isaac and Abraham knew. If you want me to kill him, then you're just going to raise him because you hate human sacrifice. But there he is, and this knife is up in the air. Isaac's laying on a stone pile, and the voice comes from heaven, stop! Don't do it. Because now I know that even the son that you love, you don't love more than me. You love me more than him. Let him go. In the Holy Land, this book is written over 4,000 years of history in the Holy Land. This narrative happened 2,800 years before the birth of Christ. Now, in 2,800 years throughout the Holy Land, geographical names change. Cities, the names of cities change. Mountain ranges change. Here's what I find very interesting in my study of Abraham. God says, go to Mount Moriah, sacrifice your son there. Abraham says, you're God, I'll do it. God says, don't do it. Awesome, thanks. I love my son. Fast forward the clock 2,800 years. Mount Moriah, 2,800 years in the time of Abraham, the name of that mountain range changed 4 times. And right now, the name of that mountain site is now called Golgotha. Sound familiar? It's the very place where Jesus Christ was crucified. And you know what God was saying to Abraham? Not your son on this mountain now, but my son on this mountain later. God did not withhold his only son as a bridge that you and I may get to him and be free. Because of one man. Because of one man's obedience.